Hi everyone, you know how important it is to get parents and caregivers to participate in parent training. I'm going to share some of the common obstacles that I've encountered in getting those parents to participate in parent training and some strategies that you can use to help overcome some of those obstacles. If you encounter other challenges in getting parents involved in parent training, let's talk about those down in the comments. The first obstacle I'm going to talk about is getting the parents to buy in to even believing there's a need for parent training and to follow through with some of those suggestions and recommendations that you've asked them to do at home. This occurs for a variety of different reasons and might go back to the fact that the parents just don't even have any confidence in their ability to be able to help their child, and they see you as the expert in being able to make the biggest difference, so they don't necessarily understand how important their role really can be. The first thing I recommend doing to help overcome this is right from intake, even during that initial tour or the initial assessment, to talk about how important parent training is and what some common goals for parent training might be to help the learner not only be able to perform a task for a therapist, but to be able to do it independently at home. It's really important to start that conversation as early in treatment as possible. Now, if you're stepping into a case that another BCBA has already been working with and they haven't set up that expectation, that task becomes a little bit more difficult because that family might already be used to doing things the way the other BCBA did and may not have that background knowledge of how important parent training is. If you're having trouble getting a family to follow through, one of the things that you can do is, just like we do with our learners, identify the function of that behavior. Figure out why that family is having difficulty following through with your expectations. Are you setting unreasonable expectations for the family? Are you addressing a goal that isn't a priority for the family? Are you asking the family to do something that the parent might not even be comfortable doing? It's really important to dig down and have an honest conversation with the parents about why they're not able to follow through with a particular request that you're making of them. So sometimes when you're working on getting parents to buy into parent training, one of the things you can consider doing is making those interventions a little bit easier for them to implement. So if you have a complex intervention that you're using with your therapist, you might need to simplify that procedure as much as possible while still maintaining the integrity and have the parent just implement one small piece of that intervention to get the ball rolling. That can be a really great strategy for getting the parents to buy into doing small things, and you can work on shaping that behavior. So parent training is often using a lot of those different interventions that we use with all of our other learners. It just doesn't always look or feel the same. So a third strategy for overcoming the parent buy-in obstacle is to use homework calendars. Making the expectations very concrete for the parents will help them be able to follow through with your expectations. I'm going to link up to a resource in the description below that you can use just as an example for a homework calendar. I like to provide just 2 or 3 different simple activities for the parent to implement during each week. I usually will send home a monthly calendar and just ask them to initial when it's been done, or I will sometimes also ask them to write in an I for independent or an H for help if the learner needed help with that particular task. And what I try to do is make it as fun and normal as possible. So I might ask the family to take a walk if it's safe for the family to take a walk, and have the learner tact dog if they see a dog. Or I might ask the family just to sit down and build with Legos for 5 minutes. Or I might ask the family to practice manned training just 2 or 3 times a week to get that ball rolling until it starts to feel more normal. So I found homework calendars are definitely a very useful resource for both, because then the parents know that I'm not expecting them to take this whole big complex program that the therapist spends hours implementing and replicate that at home. All I'm asking is for them to play with their child in a little bit of a different way. The last recommendation I have for getting parents to buy into parent training is to show a little bit of success. Sometimes if I can just demonstrate that I can teach their child something, then the parents really are more committed to listening to what I have to say. So I might pick something that might even seem unimportant, but to the family, it shows them that I kind of know what I'm talking about. And it shows them that these strategies really work. So I look for a really small behavior or a skill that I can teach reasonably quickly, and then I show the parents how I taught that skill or how I changed that particular behavior. I have found that that's a really easy way to get the parents to buy into that kind of intervention. So the next obstacle or challenge that I want to talk about is getting parents to change their own behavior. It can be really difficult for any of us to try and change our own behaviors. A lot of times we're not even cognizant of the behaviors that we engage in, so it can be really tough for us to actually make real meaningful change to our own behavior. And these are the challenges that the parents might be facing. So they might have every intention of following through and doing those things that we've asked them to do, but they're just not sure how to change their own behavior and make that happen. So the first way that I help parents overcome the challenge of changing their own behavior is just to simply talk about why changing our own behavior can be so hard. As humans, one of the things that we do is develop routines and behavior chains that help us be more efficient at completing all of the tasks that we need to complete every day. We have a long reinforcement history, and all of that has led to our establishing the routines and behaviors that we engage in every day, and changing those takes a lot of conscious effort and thought, and we have to often disrupt established behavior chains. So just helping parents understand that it is really difficult to change our own behavior and acknowledge that can be a really great first step in getting parents to actually be able to change their own behavior. The next thing that I do is recognize to parents that what I ask them to do often feels unnatural and kind of contrived. A lot of the things that I do in a clinic setting or even in a home therapy session is contrived. We're creating opportunities that may not naturally exist for the learner. That's one of the reasons why I like the homework calendar, because I can then go back and show parents exactly how they can incorporate some of what we're doing into everyday activities that just kind of feel natural. So maybe I ask them during dinner while they're sitting at the table to get the child to man for their favorite food. Maybe they really like hot dogs. We're going to work on shaping the word hot dogs, and we're just going to get the word dog or the sound duh for dog. And that's what I'm going to ask the parent to do, and I'm going to make a note of that on the calendar. So I'm going to show them very specifically how I can get those contrived situations into a more natural type of activity. And those are the activities that I'm going to ask the parent to participate in when they're doing those tasks at home after parent training is all done. So the third thing that I will do to help parents change their own behavior is to identify a potential reinforcer for themselves. Sure, a lot of parents are motivated by knowing that they're helping their child, but just like the rest of us, we all need a little extra encouragement sometimes. So helping them identify some of their own potential reinforcers can be a beneficial way to get them to buy in to all of the things that I'm asking them to do and to be able to change their own behavior. The other thing that does is it helps me discuss behavior and reinforcement in a really natural way. So I can talk about, well, what's something that might motivate you to make this change? Let's think about what you can do to get yourself to do this task that I'm asking you to do. You might use the PREMAC principle. Maybe they need to first play a game with their child, and then they can have a cup of tea when they're all done. So it's helpful if you can work through that process with the parent to help them identify some of their own potential reinforcers that they can use to motivate themselves to change their behavior. And the last way that I help parents overcome the resistance to changing their own behavior is to establish a system for accountability. So essentially a data collection system, but I don't call it a data collection system. I talk a lot about accountability or just verifying that things are getting done. A lot of times what I'll even do is blame it on the insurance company. I have to submit some sort of data to the insurance company about parent follow through and the parent's abilities to implement some of this at home. So I will often put that on the parent to be able to set up some form of accountability system. Again, I can use the homework calendar. So if I get the parent to write I for independent or H for help, that seems to make a lot more sense for them than a plus or a minus. But whatever is comfortable for your parents, that's one of the ways that I get them to change their own behavior and hold themselves accountable for completing those tasks. The third challenge that I often encounter is not having enough time in the schedule to be able to provide parent training, or maybe the parent schedule conflicts with yours and it's very difficult to be able to schedule something with that parent. One of the things that I will do to help overcome that is to try and think creatively about schedules. Are there times of the day when the parent is more available? Can the parent come in 15 minutes before their typical drop-off time? And we could use that as a parent training session, even with the child right there. If we do weekly 15-minute sessions just before the child's typical sessions, then I'm able to get in a full hour every month of parent training. I do enjoy parent training when the child is there because then it provides me with the opportunity to offer some modeling and show the parent exactly what I'm talking about or exactly what I'm looking for. There are times when the child can be really distracting and it might be really difficult to talk about some of the more important topics if the child's there, and you might need a longer parent training session for some of those conversations. But often if you just think outside the box, you can come up with a solution. Can the parent stay 15 minutes beyond the child's typical schedule and then be able to provide that parent training then? Is the parent available to check in at lunchtime? A lot of our parents who work will have some sort of lunch break. Can you schedule one meeting per month during their lunch? They can eat their lunch while you're having your meeting and you can at least get in a 30-minute parent training. So maybe you need to do that twice a month. If you combine some of those ideas, then you're typically able to get that parent in for some sort of parent training on a regular basis. So with a little finesse and a lot of patience, you can often get parents to follow through and buy into parent training. I hope you found this really helpful. Remember to like this video so that others can find it too. And you can check us out on masteraba.com.